turns to shit, okay? It's true.
Skull. Oh, yeah. Here we are on the Elders Council. Let me bring everybody up. Hey, guys. Welcome on this Sunday evening to the Elders Council. We're going to have an excellent show tonight. Can't wait. Welcome. I want to introduce the new guys. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. We are joined with some new panel members today. I thought I'd bring on some of my good friends. We may be a couple generations apart, but I thought tonight deserved us to, have some of the young guys and get their perspective on this, because it really affects them a little bit more than it does us older guys. And that would be tonight's show, which is, it appears to me that young men are somewhat rudderless in today's sexual marketplace, be that because it is a global sexual marketplace today, or that things have changed between the genders, or at least in the way we communicate, the way we perceive each other here in the West. I think those are all factors. I think it even goes so far as to how we might be raising children, and if it's leaning on social constructionism or even egalitarianism and not enough empiricism, that might be leaving some men somewhat rudderless in the sexual marketplace. A great man once said, man without a purpose is like a ship without a rudder. I think a lot of men actually feel that way when it comes to dating and relationships now. They look to guys like me and Wraith and they go, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I did everything I was supposed to do, and it still turned out different than I expected it. Is that because in society we're giving expectations that are completely false? I do think that's a big part of it. I think it's propagated throughout our media as a giant wish list that doesn't exactly match objective reality. And that's one of the reasons I brought some of the younger guys on, because they actually have some experiences. I've spoken with all of them, and I'd love to hear from them tonight. Of course, we have our panel members, starting with Wraith. We have Wraith THOR on tonight. We have Mark Daniels from Mark's Inspiration. We have Jimmy, the Texas Chad. He's doing great. And Glenn Lawrence from the Midwest. Man, what a lineup. And let me welcome Elliot Redauku, right?
Redoku.
Elliot, you're my long-lost Viking son from Britain, so that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And then I've got Huds again. Huds is a semi-regular panel member. We love having his perspective on. He's well thought out. He's what part of the U.S. are you in again, Huds?
I'm in Philly.
Philadelphia. All right, good. We always like the Philadelphia, experience there. So that'll add a good flavor to the show. So hello, beautiful. And of course, then we have Randall. This is my buddy from Phoenix, Arizona, a young up-and-comer. And I got to meet him not only at this conference of masculine excellence, where he actually did a lot of work there, and it was a pleasure hanging out with him. I also got to see him in Phoenix when the missus had her medical treatment. So that was awfully nice of you to come by. So good to have you on board, Randall. And I hope that you enjoyed the show.
Oh, glad to be on. Thank you.
Great. So just to get this thing started, I pulled up a graph, and I'm going to share it with you guys real quickly. And this isn't a graph that's been out there for a little while. And I'll share it with you guys. Here we go. So take a look here. This graph right here is young men driving the decline in sex. Now, this is actually, when I dug into this, now it doesn't say it here. I think you guys are all aware of this. This one is from the Journal of American Medical Association, and they did a study on the decline in sexlessness. This one says it's the share of men and women between the ages of 18 and 30 with no sex in the past year. Now, this is breaking down more than just the past year, but this is just the past year. So you can see right around ages 18 to 30, 28% of men had no sex in the last year, and 18% of women. Now, in the past, that hovered right around 11 or 12% for both men and women. And you see somewhere around, it looks like 2012 section, there was a divergence that occurred. and continues with a steep angle up for men. Now, they did a whole study on top of this, and it was a small percentage less, but actually between 18 and 30 was a level of sexlessness and virginity that was measured. It's almost identical to this if you dig into it. And these graphs underneath, I'm not going to go into it, but I wanted to set the stage for why modern men are sexless or rudderless in, you know, the sexual marketplace. So I wanted to share that with you guys, and I'll bounce out of that right now. And we're back and we're ready to get started. So let's go ahead and start with the new guys on the panel. And let's start with Elliot. I know he's thought about this. He talked to me just around a couple of days. Elliot, what do you think? Have you experienced this? I mean, tell us how old you are and what you've experienced so far.
Yeah, so I'm 29, so I am part of that demographic, but I'm not from the US, I'm from the UK. Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and I've spoken to other people recently about this topic, and what I've kind of learned is that there's a lot of people that have a similar experience to me, which is that a lot of young men, they don't have any real guidance or parenting, they don't have any role models as they're young men in their teens and early 20s coming up. And we have to actively go and find them ourselves. And I think that's a big issue because it means that you don't get to understand what is required for you to get to a stage where you have the skills to court women.
It seems like quite a daunting task, I imagine, if you hadn't had any experience or any friends or family that taught you how, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, every guy that I spoke to.
Did you ever find yourself in that situation, Elliot, where you felt rudderless, like you didn't know what to do just to get the conversation started?
Yeah, the majority of my life until the last couple of years.
And are you speaking from experience? Do you think that's because you didn't really have any strong role models?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't have any role models. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't feel like I could go to my family, my dad or my grandfather or a brother about any of these things.
Okay. Well, that's a good supposition. Huds, do you have a similar experience, or how do you view the topic of the day?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I look at that chart, when I think like 2012 is kind of the stark change, I think that has to do with social media, to be honest. I think that was the rise of Instagram and everything else. And you can see online exactly what you want, and then expectations rise completely past what reality is. And so when you're seeing all these Instagram models, if you're going to have an average 5 or 6 at the bar, you're not. There's been so many guys that I've known that are so picky, and they will not settle unless they get like an 8 or a 9, and then they just end up sexless for.
Oh, interesting. You know, I've actually heard that before, and some of the other guys I've done consulting, I've heard that before. They just, they want what they want, and everything else is refused. Now, you pointed out social media. I just did a quick Google search. Guess when Facebook did its IPO? Wild guess. Anybody?
2010?
Huh?
2010?
May 18th, 2012. Almost exactly when the divergence happened on the chart. I think you're really onto something there. That's I just that picked up in my mind. So I put that in there to see when. That's really when social media took off and they started making money, and they did the IPO. And I can remember it was a big pump and dump for a little while, but then it held, a year after that, and it's continued to grow. Anybody got a comment on that? Any of the other panel members have an idea on the social media thing? If it's something burning there, let me know.
I just want to say that I was deeply concerned about their stock during that time, and that was dumb. They were going to make it. It was just going to take a little while to sort itself out. Laurent probably gets a kick out of that. I was a little concerned. It's like, man, they messed that up.
Yeah, it's fascinating that on that chart right there around 2012 is when that divergence, from the 18 to 30-year-olds, male and female, started to separate so large. I mean, it's almost double the sexlessness in men today at nearly 30% versus the women at just under 18. And you can see as soon as that stock went IPO. I'm curious. I'll look up in a minute when Instagram did too, but I imagine that added fuel to the fire. Instagram is owned by Facebook, though, is it not?
Yes.
That is correct.
And I'm fascinated. Did TikTok come out just a couple years ago?
Yeah, it's fairly recent. I think that was like
wonder if we're going to
2019.
see an impact from that too. I'm not sure though. That's that little. Maybe we'll see. I know that's.
I think it's a multifaceted issue. You know, I think you could add, you know, the rise of social media, but also with the rise of the Me Too movement. When you combine the two, because they plastered a lot of that Me Too movement's drive was originated from social media. That's where the traction came from. I mean, it started in 2006, but it didn't blow up until years later to 2017. But the drive of it was still already starting to form around 2012. I mean, when you add the different factors into it, you got guys not wanting to be caught up in a situation where they are a victim of Me Too. So a lot of guys nowadays are so risk adverse. They're going to be like, I don't want to be in the situation where I'm going to be accused of something that was consensual, because it doesn't matter whether or not you are accused of it and you're not guilty. You're already guilty by public demand, by public, scrutiny.
Well, that's a fascinating supposition, because I think you're right. With the rise of social media, that was really, I just looked up the explosion in the Me Too right there in 2016. Like you said, just, a few years after the IPOs, and it started on, it was pound. So it was hashtag Me Too. It's a big social media thing. So that could definitely be suppressing the men and giving them, a lot of fear in the sexual marketplace, which would add to this rudderless. Thank you, Glenn. I think that's awesome. Randall, you're pretty new. Tell us how old you are and what's your experience with this. Now it is global sexual marketplace because of social media. And what's your experience there? I mean, we were talking, the majority of the time for you to meet a woman today is not because you meet her in the course of your daily activities. You have to reach out on some kind of media. Is that correct?
So I'm 33. I grew up in the church with a single mother and all that. So for a large majority of my 20s until my late 20s, I was one of the men who removed myself from the sexual marketplace because I was Christian. I was waiting for marriage and all that. I still tried to date, but the thing was, it was so much easier to get like the digital pleasure versus trying to go out and interact with the women in real life. Like, technology is amazing. Like, without technology, we wouldn't be talking. But technology has also made a lot of what men face today even worse, because humans in general, we take the easiest thing. We'll take prepackaged food over growing our own food. Men will go and watch porn versus going out and talking to a woman. We'll play video games of being that superhero versus going out, working out, and being that real life superhero. Like, we're not going to be the firefighter because we can do something in video game. It's safe. We get that same dopamine hit. We get the pleasure of succeeding without us actually having to do anything in real life. And so, like, cell phones came out shortly after I graduated, which is crazy because of how much we use them nowadays. Like, I'm on my phone now talking to you guys. But the ease of accessibility to easy pleasure has killed a lot of men's drives. Why are they going to risk exposing themselves and getting hurt to go talk to that woman who has all these guys around the world to compete against, when I could just go and look on something online? And so a lot of men will just go the way of water. They go the way of least resistance. And so I think that is part of the, like, why a lot of men are sexless nowadays, is because it's just easier to get your pleasure through e-girls and OnlyFans and whatnot like that.
Yeah, that sounds that's interesting. And the return on investment. We did a show on return on investment in a relationship too. So that's kind of interesting that you'd say that. Do you have friends that experience this, that actually live this way?
I lived that way for a bit.
Okay.
Like, when I decided to finally leave the church and whatnot, like I still struggle to, and even to this day, I sometimes have issues approaching women. But I know men who would rather play video games, watch porn, jack off, and then just go to work and repeat because it's easy, it's safe. They get their dopamine hit through the video games. They get to be that badass character online. They get the praise of their friends for being good on video games online. And then they prefer to just stay at home because outside they control, well, in their house, they control their interactions, they control their risk exposure. And by going outside, they are then removing that control. And a lot of them don't know how to handle not having that control over everything in their life. And so they don't put themselves out there. They don't take the risk to go and like try.
Yeah,
And so,
interesting. We do see a lot of guys like that in some of our activities we've had recently, for sure. I mean, you've experienced that and you struggle with that. I'm glad you're able to share that with us. What is that existence like though over time? I mean, I imagine that you would want to sedate
torture.
yourself after a while. It's torture, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
we
was
have
borderline alcoholic. I never got into anything hard because I loved liquor and liquor was good enough for me. And so, but I would go through 40s, multiple 40 ounces of old school malt liquor, like sitting back on the couch playing Call of Duty. I would drink 3 or 4 of those in one night.
yeah.
There was a time where I finally, like, I cleaned up my room and underneath my bed, I think I had like over 40 bottles of 40 ounces just stitched under there because it was easier in my drunken stupor. All right, they're out of sight, out of mind. I didn't pay attention to them. But it was easier for me to just stay in that existence, go and go to work, suffer through work, deal with work, come home, turn on that video game. I'm instantly talking with friends. I've got the booze there to start killing the pain from not from dealing with the issues at work, and it was easier that way. And but ultimately, inside I wasn't happy, and so it started taking more and more of the booze to kill that, to kill
Wow.
like the pain. And so eventually, it just took me basically waking up, being like, okay, they've got the saying, insanity is doing the same thing time after time and expecting a different result. And then I had to basically have a sit down conversation with myself, look myself in the mirror, and be like, okay, what we've been doing, is it fucking working? Are we going to keep doing this? Or are we going to change? And so I started to seek out some change. And through just YouTube rabbit holes, I fell into the RP community and I've not looked back since. Like, my life has improved so much from being around other men, like men who are men and aren't afraid to do that. I think that's another thing is why a lot of guys suffer from sexless is because they don't have other male role models to be like, oh, those drives you're feeling? Yeah, they're normal. They're okay. Don't demonize those. Like, growing up in the church in the early 90s, that was something that they did, was they demonized sexuality. And so a lot of that, I think, echoes throughout the community today, just not even just from the parents, but it just, as society like men were told, you're not supposed to find these women attractive, these desires that you feel are not natural, and you shouldn't feel these are a sin against God, you're going to hell. And when you're like 14, 15, and like people who are the adults who are supposed to lead you on your path are telling you this, you're like, holy shit. You start to internalize that, and pretty soon you start to think that you are evil. It becomes like a cycle of self-hatred. So they start to hate themselves for feeling natural. And I think that's one of the things that this community does, is it tells the men, no, what you're feeling is natural. This is how guys feel. We're not going out here acting on every single like urge we get. But no, these urges are acceptable, they're normal, and if you don't feel them, that's when you have something to worry about.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think there's a man on this panel that hasn't felt to some degree or has done to some degree what you experienced right there at some point in our lives. You know, we have two primary drives, and the first drive is to survive, and the second drive is to procreate. And when you subvert it that strong, you may have the surface level needs met, but it is quite a hollow existence. You don't have that rudder. Thanks for sharing that with us. And you know what? Since you did share that, let's go ahead and comment on Randall's experience as a young man, rudderless in the sexual marketplace. And we'll get back to some solutions towards the end, okay? But let's open up the panel. Anybody want to make a comment on what Randall just stated?
I'll say what Randall said is actually very factual when it comes to the church community. I have a degree in religion from Liberty University. I was a youth pastor. You know, I remember these conversations with young men, and my approach was a little different. You know, and I tell them, like, you know, you're gonna feel this way, but as much as you're giving yourself away to them, you got to make sure that you're getting your return as well. And you're not going to get a good return if you're just constantly throwing everything out there. You risk too much. But the conversations were bad because I mean, I remember growing up, because I grew up in the same way. It was like, oh my God, I beat off and now I've got to go confess my sins to God because, you know, I just sinned and now I'm going to hell, you know, with lotion on my hand. You know, it's a very traumatic experience for young men to have to think about, because these are natural urges. These are natural desires. God, if you're going to believe in God, God created you with these desires. He knew what your temptations were going to be. He also knew exactly what you were going to deal with. You know, it should not be beaten over young men's head that they are an embarrassment or they're less of a man because they have these urges. And there needs to be a change in the community of men in that religious sector to talk about this open and honestly, because half the pastors out there that are talking about it and beating the lust over people's heads are also the same half pastors that are having affairs on their wives and they're sleeping with hookers. So, I mean, there's a huge point of hypocrisy out there that they're trying to, you know, shame men for having these natural desires and urges. So it's pretty disgusting. But I definitely could say that I felt the same thing. I grew up in the same type of environment. I know exactly where he was coming from with that.
All right. I saw you raise your hand. I'm going to add to what Randall had to say.
Me?
Yeah.
Good morning, gentlemen. So, Randall, thank you very much for sharing. You mentioned something interesting. You mentioned that you were raised by a single mother. So I live in Japan, and looking at the statistics, 44.2% of men, millennials, are virgins. And a lot of them were raised not by a single mother, but by an absent father. And they were raised in the hatred of the father. Like in Japanese, there's actually a very famous saying. It says, "Rusu de genki ga ii." So as long as the husband is away and in a healthy and brings money, we're happy. And the hatred of the father has gone to the children. So they've always said, like, you can hear mothers say, like, be nice to girls, be nice to girls. When was the last time like being a nice guy worked with women? Unanimous decision, right? So, and being like, they basically take the opposite of the father, and the father are workhorse beaters. So, and for instance, in Japanese are awkward with women. And I'll give you I'll give you a quantified example. Last week, I clocked 25 line numbers, and I approached like a lot of chicks, a lot of them, just, you know, and I actually spent like Saturday night with 9 Japan Miss Universe. So like these are solid 9 and 10, which in American scales would be plus 19 or plus 20, given that your average starts at minus 10 usually. So, but the idea there is that it's daunting to do that. And if you make it a video game, it's easy. But the follow-up on this is like the ghosting rate is immense. And of course, my game is rusty as fuck, and I'm not the prettiest. I'm not just a pretty face. But imagine for a Japanese introvert, like what we call otaku, These guys like walking up to a woman like, no way, they can't do that, and like take it as a humiliation, take it personal. It's extremely difficult. It's humiliating for a lot of these guys. They take it as a humiliation instead of taking it as a game. So there's no wonder that it's so difficult, and the market is so skewed. So that was my take. My take on this is like being raised by an absent father, or like a mother, has a very, very deep repercussion, consequences.
So
yes, sir.
Would you see this as a Western issue, or is this worldwide?
Oh, it's totally universal. I mean, the sexlessness, the absence of role models, like it's
Really?
worldwide. Worldwide, like it's the same in France. It's even worse in France than it is in Japan. Japan is probably more pronounced because people are introvert, like they're naturally shy. Even though there's a word in Japanese that says "nampa," like going out to talk to women. But I actually asked Miss Universe, so how many guys spoke to you today? And I was surrounded by the hottest chicks in the club, and no other guy. Everybody was drooling, but was 2 feet away. Nobody would ever come to and talk to them. Like, yeah, man, this is awesome.
I don't have anybody on the panel from China, but I have a close friend that's from China, and it's even affected China, which is somewhat isolated. But there's a lot of men there, and a lot of them have withdrawn and are frustrated because of the state of females there that are becoming more and more connected globally, I understand, and their attraction lies somewhere else, and it's a huge issue, is my understanding. They've actually started masculinity schools for these young men to go back to what Elliot said, not having role models, and that the Chinese government has. I'm not advocating Chinese communism, but they have recognized a lack of role models in the area of masculinity.
And the penalty for failing is immense. Like, imagine if you're like in your mid 30s or 40s and you try to approach a woman, obviously, and you're virgin, you're going to come as a creep. So a large portion of the Japanese population used to marry within the company. They meet somebody within the company and then off they go. Now it's called endogamy. In Japanese, it's called shanaikekon. But the penalty for this, like, imagine you approach as a creep. Next thing you know, she's going to report you to the HR. Couple of weeks on the road, you're out. Game over. Literally game over on your life. You've been fined for sexual harassment. Game over.
Yeah. So in the military, is it like this, TJ? Tom, you've exposed to a lot of young men. You finding young men rudderless in the sexual marketplace today, just kind of struggling with the whole concept of being able to date? And what do you find with young men? Do they want relationships, or they just want to be a player, Chad?
Well, first of all, I got a new mic. Can you hear me?
You sound fantastic, Tom.
Okay. Well, I should say my wife got a new microphone. So
say hi to her for us.
Sure will. Yeah, apologies about being late. She put together another video, and it just took a lot longer to render than we.
Oh, that's okay.
Anyway.
She's doing great. Yep.
Okay. So to answer the question, if it's appropriate and I have established a good enough rapport with the patient, I'll ask them, hey, it's at the end of the encounter, like after taking care of their medical needs, I'll say, so, hey, just out of curiosity, if they're, and there's the context for this, if they are very, very rudderless and they look a little bit hopeless and kind of psychologically frail, or if they're very, very proper and military bearing and have a presence about them, those are kind of the young men that I ask, hey, did you come from a single mother home or did you come from a two-parent home? And I'm sure you can guess the answer. Almost all of the young men that are struggling to find purpose and direction, that seem a little bit psychologically more frail, they all came from broken homes. And the other young men that come from the two-parent household tend to, they don't even actually want to be in my office. They're actually really, really hurt or sick or something because they have that resilience that they don't even want to be there. So the answer to the question is absolutely. I have seen it personally, and if it's appropriate and I have a rapport with the patient, I'll ask them, and it's been 100%. Now, as far as the second question, hey, do they want to date? Absolutely, they want to date. I have asked several young men, in the last year or so, hey, it's a Friday night, and like the last patient, it's going to be 5 o'clock at night here. Are you going to go down to the university area? And they're like, now, this is not super common, but it's been said enough that it's worth mentioning on the panel. They say something to the effect of, F no, sir, I'm not doing that. What are you going to do? I'm going to stay in my barracks room and play video games. Why are you going to do that? Sir, All that it takes is one of these young women to say one thing, and my career is over in this army. And I was like, man. So they want to date, but like Russell was saying, I think that they're afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So you're experiencing
that's a huge thing that he said that, because that's a big point, that it's across the board, not just in the military, but even I talk to young guys that are in colleges. They rather just stay in their dorm room and play video games because it's safer than there's a safety element here that is lost in this conversation about guys not being out there, getting girls, is because the risk is coming out not to be worth the reward. Guys are starting to see that. It's because now you have women are able to retroactively go back and say that they were sexually assaulted after the fact. I mean, in senses like, oh, I hooked up with the wrong guy. Now everybody knows, oh, he took advantage of me. I mean, that's number. There's number cases of that. The 2 football players that lost their scholarship from the college because the girl decided she wanted to lie on them. And guys are hearing this. Guys are seeing this, and they're like, I'm not going to be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy. And I think what TJ was saying is huge, because in my military career, that was also a big thing. And that was 10 years ago. It was even back then, we were told by our instructors, our superiors, don't be going out down to Colorado Springs. Don't be going out to the clubs. If you go out to the clubs, you're going to catch a case. There's girls out there that want to do this to you. And this is what guys are being told. So what TJ is saying is very accurate, because it kind of gets embedded in these guys. They're like, look, my career is worth more than spending time with this girl. Although they want to spend time with the women, they don't know how to vet the women. I think that's a big issue that a lot of these guys are running across, is that they don't know how to vet women properly to experience that.
Well, is it that, or is it rudderless? Even just getting the past the fear to even, engage with the woman himself, because, fortune favors the bold. And I'm seeing, at least the topic today was, I see guys having trouble even getting started. And I want to get to Jimmy, Mark, and Wraith on their input on that. So let's start with Mark, because I know you got a time limit, and then we'll hit Jimmy on his thoughts on this, and we'll end with the master, and then we'll start to talk about some solutions. All right. Okay. So let's do that, Mark.
My view on this is, I have 5 young boys, 21 and under. And I think a couple of the guys said too, there's a father in the home, and it's me. And I've had a lot of women. I was counting the other day, actually I've had 10 kids. So been married 4 times. And so the example I set is, not that I'm not running around all the time, but they've learned to, I guess by my example or how I am with women, how to approach women. They have girls that sneak over here at night and jump in bed with them. So they don't have a trouble approaching. They have the fear like everyone, but they don't have trouble approaching. And I believe it's because there's only been a masculine presence here. They've had no woman's influence because the mother has been gone for like 11 years. But on the other hand, and somebody else mentioned it, Glenn, I think about the Me Too thing, and that I don't want to date anybody in the U.S. Like the girl, I met that girl in Mexico this last week. I have no fear about that whatsoever, about any problems like this Me Too or retroactive, oh, I didn't want to do it. But in the U.S., I'm nervous when I talk to girls here. I mean, if I'm going to go out with them, because you're kind of a target. And the only solution I would see to that, and somebody else can give me an idea whether that would work or not, is I would tell my boys to just turn the recorder on their phone. That sounds ridiculous to have to go to that length, but one of my boys was accused of raping this girl with another boy, when in reality she had called and wanted my son to come down there and be with her, have sex with her. But he couldn't come unless he brought his friends, so this girl said, okay, I'll screw you both. She did, but then later her boyfriend found out, and so she said she got raped. Fortunately,
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a really serious story right there. I mean, that
Fortunately,
getting any.
But let's tell you what happened here. Fortunately, when the police came, they wanted his phone, and he had it. And the policeman told me specifically, well, we asked for hers, but it came up missing in action. So because he had the conversation on the phone, they took it and they went through the phone. That was the end of it. Because she said on there she wanted to be with him, and I'm not sure what else was said, but that saved his ass.
That was text?
Yeah, it was the text message where she said, come down here, I'll fuck you both. And he was like 16 or 17. This girl was probably 14 or 15, I'm not sure. And the boys, and there's more to the story, but that's the legal short.
Did they arrest the boys or detain them and take them in? Did they take the boys in?
No, we had to go down there. I had to take my son. The other boy had to go down there. But the girl's father came here about a week or so later and started a bunch of shit, had a big fight. He beat the shit out of the other boy, and the police came. It was a mess because the girl lied. So there you go. But he got out of it because
how old was the girl?
She was probably 14 or 15, and my son was 16 or 17 at the time.
They learned so fast.
Yeah, so that's. Like I said, when I talk to girls online here and I think about meeting them, I don't know. It's just I'm concerned, like Glenn was talking about. But if I go out of the country, there's you don't have that crap. I don't even worry about it.
So the question is, do you still, just for my edification, you still talk to women here locally? Do you run into the same issues? I mean, seems to me Dave Game would eliminate some of that. You're doing these setups blind on the internet, and I guess that's very common. Is this part of hookup culture? I haven't participated that much in the hookup thing, so that's common for the young folks, that do hook up for the girls, I guess.
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Your kids, do they do the hookup culture?
Okay. Well, I suppose because there's girls that come over here and just sleep with them, and sometimes I'll see them sneaking out in the morning. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how they usually get together by Snapchat or something like that. Is what it is. They're really not. I mean, they make girls out at parties too, but many times they talk online and they'll meet somewhere, or the girl will come over here. Maybe they live in town, they'll walk over here. So
I would think your boys are probably not
actually come here.
Yeah, your boys probably aren't rudderless. They work for you too, right?
No, they don't have any trouble. Well, we talk, and somebody else mentioned it. See, we talk as men.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for years. They work with me, and even when they're teenagers, they can come to me and talk to me about anything.
Yeah.
And then so they have an idea, and that's what's lacking, not just with the father, but when I grew up, I talked to men. I was around men all the time I was growing up. And then when I got older, 16 or 17, when I'd get off work, because I quit school and went to work, we would be standing around the back of the pickup trucks, maybe 10, 15 of us, drinking a beer and talking as men. And that doesn't happen like it used to.
No, that's a good point. I like that you mentioned that. Let's talk with Jimmy. You've worked around a lot of men. What are your thoughts on this, on men today being rudderless in the sexual marketplace and struggling with even approaching? I don't think that's Mark's troubles for his children, but certainly Randall expressed something I think is very, very common.
Yeah, listening to that, it was, it's so emblematic of what I see just out in the wider world today. The first thing I would say is that I think, like a lot of you guys, the online presence of young people that spend 20 hours a day online really prevents them from having that face-to-face kind of risk-based interaction where you risk rejection. When I was a kid, even in like junior high, we'd do a fundraiser for the school selling these books of coupons, and I would go walk through the entire neighborhood and walk through the next neighborhood over. And I would set a goal, like I'm going to sell 30 of these in one night. And I would just keep walking until it was done, whether it was dark or not, and whether it was 9 o'clock or not. And the later it got, I think people were just buying them because they couldn't believe I was standing there, and you just, there is no better way to learn about rejection and tenacity and goal setting than just something really simple like that. I don't know if kids are doing that today. Like, do they even sell entertainment books anymore? Or, what? I think now parents just write the check, whatever, the school say, hey, we need $100 from you. And they just write the check, and the kids don't. The whole point of it is going out and doing the experience versus the parents just cutting a check, So,
wow.
I think it's one part of it. Right. And then the other thing I was going to say too, to kind of piggyback on what TJ said, especially when these young guys get into the service, especially if they're coming out of college, let's say they were in an officer program or something, you guys cannot, if you're not around the university campus right now, you cannot imagine the impact in the United States that Title IX has on what it is to be a young man in the university system. And for those of you that maybe aren't intimately familiar with how all of this works, since I've been out of school, I graduated in 2002, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. These universities in that intervening time have set up these non-judicial tribunals that they're extrajudicial. It's not a court. It isn't a judge. It is a cabal of administrators that will hand down a judgment that can result in the expulsion of the student, a virtual tar and feathering, and there is no due process. There's no standards of evidence. This is not a court proceeding. And so, I can understand why guys feel this way.
Yeah, I've heard of that. And of course, there's a large decline in men even seeking any of these university degrees right now.
You know what's funny about that, though?
When you mentioned, going out and selling things, it wasn't but 2 weeks ago, there was some kids doing that were teenagers, but their parents were with them.
Oh my God! Come on, you can't.
No.
I'm just in complete disagreement that you got to go with your kids to go do.
Yeah, the parents were with them, doing the whole thing.
You know what's interesting about what Jimmy just said about Title IX and what you're talking about with the chart? That happened during Obama's term. Obama lowered the standard for prosecution with Title IX, and that is around 2008, 2012, whereas we're starting to see the decline in men. And so if you look at all the different facets, there's plenty of facets that compute to why we're seeing this decline. But the Title IX change, I think, happened in 2012. When they lowered the standard of proof. You don't need to have beyond reasonable doubt. You just have to have, was he there? Was she there? Okay, that was what happened. There's no due process when it comes to Title IX in schools. And there's a lot of young men that are suffering from not being able to finish their education that they wanted to because of these false accusations and because of the way Title IX is now set up, that they are not able to finish school. And most schools won't even accept them back into school after they're even cleared of the accusation.
One thing that I heard the other day that I thought was interesting, because you got a lot of private institutions and even with the public ones as well, is if you get accused, it's a lot easier for them to just go without the liability and get rid of you than it is to actually take the time to go through it.
Yeah. How are you supposed to talk a guy into going into an environment like that? They're outnumbered. They're not sure what they want to do anyway. Their dad is not giving them any advice on how to do any of this. Okay. The average guy doesn't have, when he chose his wife, the dad of these kids kind of took the first thing that fell in his lap. It wasn't like he had 10 or 12 choices to choose from. So these are the predictable outcomes of that sort of thing. Like, in other words, what would they tell their sons? For the most part, it was like, when the right one comes along, you'll know. Oh, that's brilliant. That's actionable. Brilliant advice, Dad. Thanks a lot. Just be yourself. This is the extent of the advice. And what they really need to hear is, what is your thing? What are you going to be good at? How are you going to distinguish yourself among all these other guys? Are you going to play football? Are you going to start a business when you're a teenager? What are you going to do? But what's not going to work is just sitting around here. I grew up with a bunch of peers that had parents that had tons of money, and they were like living at a resort in the summer. You know what I'm saying? They got a pool, they got everything, and it's like, I always had jobs. I mean, the jobs sucked. I mean, I can run through, and there's probably 30 or 40 of them that were terrible, but I always had something I was doing.
Yeah.
Well, kids are coddled. I mean, it's like they're not pushed to do anything. When I went to Mexico, I made my 18-year-old son finish up a job we had, and he went back to another job and started, and he was in charge of the employees, a brother and the other guy, and he he was responsible for that. When I come back home, he says, I don't know how you do it. Plus, he was responsible for the home. He's 18 years old. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, I can't believe you. But I was living by myself when I was 15 or 16. So they need to be able to have that. And if he messes up, he messes up. I mess up all the time. I make mistakes. But we have to give these young men some responsibility so they can screw up and fix it and go on and learn from it. They're just so, like he said, these kids are living in a resort atmosphere where everything is just taken care of. So they get out there in the real world, and we got this Me Too. They don't know how to handle this type of adversity. I don't really know myself, but you could come up with some kind of a plan or get to where you can go somewhere where it isn't so, I don't know, go out of the country or at least protect yourself with the phone recorder or whatever you have to do. And one of you, I think you mentioned it, Thor, about everybody now is so risk adverse and so concerned about being safe, they don't live their life.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to live your life. You got to take some damn chances, man. Or you look back on your life and you're like, well, I stayed safe, but I didn't do much. I wish I'd have did this, and this. So you got to step out there.
So Thor, how old were these kids that were walking around selling the entertainment books that had their parents with them? I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this.
They weren't 16, but they weren't 12 either. I mean, they're maybe as young as 12.
We were riding our bikes all over town and walking on the railroad tracks and climbing in culverts and.
It's a little, yeah. I mean, they were nice enough, but I was kind of, I didn't really strike me too much until you said that, and I realized when I was young, yeah, that wouldn't happen. It was very different mentality. You know, before I want to get Ray's input on this, but I want to just mention something to the entire panel, because when we talk about solutions, it is going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, and I'll tell you why. They just had this World Economic Forum. It's called Davos, and I don't get too much into politics. However, there was something on the agenda, and what came out of it and was published by the National Fund for Workforce Solutions was very interesting. What came out of Davos was a statement that said the scale of gender and racial inequities in the U.S. workforce is staggering. In fact, systemic racism and gender inequality produce low quality jobs at the cost of $2.3 trillion in GDP. I mean, that's all code words. So protected classes, according to Davos, are one of their top priorities. And if you go to Davos, there is an agenda item, which is gender equity throughout the world is on Davos's World Economic Forum radar. Not how do we, solve our energy problem, but no, we have biodiversity problems and we have gender inequity problems. This is an economic forum that's huge, but there's definitely something afoot, and it seems kind of quite Marxist based, like modern feminism. But if that's what they're broadcasting, that just opens the door to more Me Too type of thing in my mind. I'm sure there's plenty of inequities throughout workforces everywhere, but you walk away. You do something better. You're not slaves.
So anyway, one of the things that I've tried to really, and I want everybody to hear this on the panel, for the longest time, I kind of held this attitude that if you don't understand the value of capitalism, the problem's with you. And so you need to grow up, you need to buy Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell and sit down and read it. And what I've realized is that there's generations of young people that can now vote that are questioning the value of capitalism. And the correct reaction that's much more productive is to say, I hear you and I can see your perspective. And for a young man to kind of tie this back to the topic, they're looking out at the world thinking, I don't understand what's in it for me.
Sure.
I am terrified of the sexual marketplace. I'm not squared away. I know I'm not squared away. I don't know how to do it. There's nobody around me that can tell me how to do it. I'm never going to be able to afford to buy a house. That's a farce. And if I don't have a house, how will I ever have a family? Even if I wanted one, even if I wanted to take the risk to have one. And I've got $100,000 in student loan debt. And I'm 3 seconds away from getting Me Too'd by a girl at work that I asked to have coffee with me, and she just didn't want the attention. Like, I don't want to grow up. I don't want any part of this.
You just
I just want to stay inside and play video games.
Yeah, you stated some of the many threads that lead to the frustration of these sexlessness with these young men that end up turning to violence because they are so frustrated. We've seen it. We've seen it like clockwork every time there's a midterm election. It appears as though there's an increase in school shootings. I'm not saying anything, but at least there is the appearance because of the media. You got entities worldwide like Davos broadcasting this, and just the confirmation bias that everybody will have is they're an authority. There's no studies behind it. There's nothing. Yeah. It's made up, just like the problem we have in modern psychology with the replication crisis. You can say anything, but if you appear as if you're an authority, it gets locked into media, and now it's gospel. That's going to be a challenge for all young men to deal with. And I know Wraith talks to a lot of young men, and let's go ahead and let Wraith make his comments, and then let's turn it right there and let Wraith offer a couple solutions, and we'll circle back around in that fashion. I think that'll be a good way to go. Oh, I got you muted. Hang on. There we go. Thanks, Ray.
I think from my standpoint, understanding why young men are the way they are these days, it's mostly fear. And the fear is more than, what your mother tells you or just getting up every day and going out the door. It's a base fear of not being able to perform, not being accepted. And when you live in that kind of fear, it creates a situation. When you think of what does fear create for young men, it creates either shame, apathy, or anger. And that's how young men respond to it. And if you turn that fear into yourself, that's shame. If you turn that fear out to someone else, that's apathy. If you become angry, then you make someone pay for the fear you have. Way too many young men live in fear. I don't care about the Me Too movement. I don't care about social media. What I care about is young men taking the challenge to be themselves, to stand up and move forward in life. And if you create that life for yourself, I think you're less likely to be a person that is Me Too'd, because you're standing out for your honor, your integrity, and your dignity. And when you have that for yourself, you can give that to other people. And if you're not willing to do that, you can sit and play video games and practice apathy all day long, and you'll be in the same place you were 10 years ago. And most of the men I talk to today, they're the need for pornography and masturbation comes from the apathy that you live in life. You don't want to have those emotions, feelings, or anything for yourself and other people. And that's the sad state that young men live in today. Did it happen in 2012? I think it happened before that. I just think that a lot of young men came of age in 2012. And because they came of age, it shows up in the graph. What we're experiencing as men today didn't happen in 2012. It happened in the 90s and the early 2000s. Because we had an understanding of men that the feminists were able to take a hold of and say, this is what it takes to be a man. And that's toxic.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, make you the better you. Quit living in fear and understand that life is full of risk, but you're not living life if you're not taking risk, because you can't learn and you can't grow.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. It started long ago, for sure. We see it manifest on the chart. We see those risks manifest. You can hear the end result and, kind of the pain that goes with that, being rudderless and not fulfilling your primary drives in today's society. So let's talk about, how do young men today fix this. And I think, Wraith, you really touched on it, you know, by taking action and living your best life right now in this moment. I know you do some good work with teaching men how to achieve frame for themselves. And, you know, it is important that if you have a big view on these things, to narrow it down to yourself and make yourself your own mental point of origin is the first start for men that want to not be rudderless in this sexual marketplace. Because then the next step is learn how to be attractive, not attracted to the opposite sex, but attracted to all people, because that right there will work for you. That and the development of social skills. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge because, you know, you're starting at a deficit. What do you think about that, Wraith? Do you have anything you might add on what young men might do simply to, you know, gain their bearing in the modern sexual marketplace?
I think the first thing to do is, you know, start considering yourself as the most important person in your life. You're a young man, you're not married, you don't have kids, and then this is the time for you to focus on you. It's the time for you to focus on making money, taking care of yourself, and setting up the standard for how you're going to live your life. We talk a lot about frame. When I work with young men, I have them write a frame statement.
Yeah.
Okay. The frame statement is basically what you want out of life. Way too many young men don't even know what they want out of life. They sit back and wait for life to happen to them. And until we can change that in the mindset of young men, we're going to have that shame, you know, and it's going to exhibit itself the way it's been exhibiting itself. The worst part of that is the anger.
Yeah.
You know, because men taking the shame and acting out of anger not only hurts the man, but it hurts the people around him, and it hurts other people because it's not focused. Part of being in the military or part of being a cop is that it's not really anger, but it's controlled violence. Understanding that, you know, anger is a loss of control, and that anything that you do as a in the military or anything you do as a police officer is supposed to be controlled violence.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the reality of it. A lot of people don't like to hear violence, but it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I do with young men is I tell them, look, at some point in your life, you've got to decide who you're going to be and what you want out of life. And that's before you even get to the purpose in life. Because you can't define a purpose if you don't know who you want to be.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work looking at that. How do you want to treat people to treat you? How do you want to treat the world?
Wraith, how do you feel about purpose? Because, you know, I've counseled some men, and actually I've consulted with quite a few women that when they find themselves in a stressful environment at work or dissatisfied with work or even dissatisfied in a relationship, as the anxiety sets in, that almost universally what I hear is, I've lost my purpose. And I'm not sure that's the right terminology, but that's what I'm hearing. And I hear that sometimes from young men that are having anxiety and stress too. I don't know what my purpose is. In my mind, what is your thoughts on purpose? Is purpose a goal? Or at least for me, purpose seems to manifest itself as I take action. I don't have to hunt for it. It seems to show up as I take action to improve my state or live my best life. What are your thoughts on purpose, Wraith?
Well, I think a lot of people, they go for purposes. And a lot of what you hear is in the workplace. What is my purpose for doing this? And, you know, does this make me grow, you know, as a person? I mean, my purpose is fairly simple. At a level of, I strive to be the best man I can be every day.
Yep.
That's my purpose.
I think a lot of folks, you know, I had a study here I was looking at earlier that 55% of adult working age people have their identity solely wrapped around their career. I think that might be a key to the insight on purpose when somebody's having trouble at work and they identify what you just said, you know, about purpose with their work. You know, I don't think that's the most healthy thing, is to identify your career as your identity. I think a lot of this is an identity crisis with young men.
Right.
How do they establish an identity at becoming a man? We've talked about rites of passage here, but I think that we're not going to go back and fix that right now, but we have to teach these young men, or at least give examples on how they achieve an identity for themselves. And I think that's within reach. That is definitely within reach for everybody on the panel to achieve. And here's the thing with that. When you achieve it, people see it and they want it, and they will emulate you when you are able to do that. So
yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think my purpose isn't helping young men.
Right.
Okay. That's not my purpose. I'm good at it and I enjoy doing it. All right. If I can do something I enjoy, it's no different than playing baseball if I enjoy that, or something like, or some hobby or something like that. Not to say that I do this as a hobby, but it's finding joy in the things you do.
Yeah.
Is a purpose. Okay. Not receiving joy from the things you do.
Yeah.
Okay. TJ, he's a doctor. Probably very good at it.
Yeah.
And it gives him joy and pride and all that stuff that comes with that he can help people. I don't know that he woke up one day and said, my purpose is to be a doctor. And Glenn does the same thing through media and movies. He wants to be able to take those images and help or teach someone something about themselves. But it's still not his purpose. His purpose is to get up every day and do something that for me, it's be a better man every day. Because if I'm a better man every day, it helps all of society. That's what a man's purpose is.
And it helps you.
And it helps me.
Exactly.
This whole thing about my purpose is I can only be happy if my purpose fulfills me with the work that I'm doing. And, it's work. It's when you do what you love, it's not like work. That's bullshit. It's always been bullshit. If you do what you do and you gain joy from it, yes, it's easier to do, but it's not your purpose. People make money doing different things. That's not your purpose.
Correct.
Okay. Your purpose is to find something that makes you a better human and contributes to whatever group, tribe, or country, civilization that you belong to.
Yeah, I think too many people definitely do confuse that, especially young men, especially since some of them are struggling financially. I get the correlation. And to couple that with sexlessness, that's brutal, because, I got to get to, definitely if the guys are interested in getting out of that, we have guys here that have done that. And there's some good advice here. So let's go around the panel and let's get some advice on this. How do young men that are rudderless today find a navigation system so they're not rudderless in the sexual marketplace? Let's just start with Glenn. Glenn, how do we get that navigation system and not be rudderless? What do you think young men can do today in order to start that? And how do they get past this fear so that they can, favor, fortune favors the bold? How do they get past this fear?
I'm gonna share a quote, a C.S. Lewis quote, and it was from Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe. And if you guys don't know, Aslan is the lion, and this is what they're referring to him as. Okay, they asked him, is he safe? And the answer is no, he's not safe, but he is good. And I was thinking about that yesterday, and I was like, man, too many men are worried about being safe, but not good. They're worried about appearing to be safe, but not good. Because they feel like if they could appeal to a woman's need of safety, that they will get them what they want. How many guys are in here that know people that were safe, that were friend zoned, and they're not getting where they want to get, and then they get frustrated, and then they have this different understanding. They're approaching it differently. Men, we're not safe. We're not safe, but we're supposed to be good. We're supposed to be admirable. We're supposed to have loyalties. We're supposed to be real men, but we're so consumed with what the media and everybody tells us we're supposed to be, rather than looking at ourselves, looking at our elders and be like, man, what makes them a man? Like I can tell you right now, what makes my dad a man is his work ethic, is his drive, is his dedication to his family, is who it embodies him, it's who he is. Like there's not a moment in my life I can tell you where I can't just think about my dad not being there, because that's what his responsibilities was embodied in him. It's who he was. And it took a lot of risk. It took a lot of sacrifices. It took a lot of failing. You know, I'm not where I'm at now because everything was going easy and I took the safe route. No, there was a lot of risk. There was a lot of failures. There's a lot of downfalls. There's a lot of humiliation. But that's part of the process. And too many times guys are so risk adverse. They want things to be safe, but not realize that you can't get anywhere in safety. You can't grow in your comfort zone. You can't, navigate and achieve what you want if you're playing it safe. So we have to take risks, but we have to take calculated risks. We have to be smart. And when it comes to the women, I tell guys, look, the theme is, eggs are more expensive than sperm. Well, that's true. But guess what? We could change that. You don't have to give your nut to every chick that climbs up your tree. Vet the girl better. I mean, I think Coco, and by the way, Coco is my girl. So that's why I was sending her some love. But she's right here. Men need to vet these girls like it's a job interview. What do you like here? I'm the owner of the company. You want to invest in, you want you to work for me. Let me see your resume. Let me see if you're a good fit for me. Oh, wait a minute, you have OnlyFans. Never mind, that's off the list. Sorry, you're not my employee. That's a really good quote that she has here. But guys are too worried about losing the opportunity and not seeing that there is a surplus. I thought I saw recently a study that there's more women populated this earth than there's men right now. So guys, there's more out there, but we have to take the initiative. We have to take calculated risks. We have to stop playing it safe, but we have to be smart. We have to be good. We have to worry about more focused on being good than we are being safe. That's what I got.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I think that some guys, I think the job interview is excellent, but a lot of guys that are in trouble haven't even advertised for the job yet. They haven't even advertised for the girlfriend. They haven't even advertised for the date, and they don't know how to write the job advertisement. And that's where we can help, guys. So let's move to the next one. Let's get Texas Chad. Let's get your thoughts on what guys can do today to get past that. And any thoughts that you have here to wrap it up in a positive nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing these young guys got to understand is that nobody's coming to save them. Nobody. Yeah. Especially if you're white and you're male. It's, nobody's coming to save you. The second thing is that you're
really
going to have to take some risk.
Though.
And what you need to do is you need to do something hard that you don't want to do every day. And over time, you'll grow more comfortable doing the hard thing that you don't want to do every day. And it's going to start small and it's going to be modest, and then it'll build on itself. A lot of what Ray said and Glenn said resonates with me. I tell young guys all the time when I meet them, especially if they're straight out of high school, I tell them, look, find something you really want to do. You don't have to have all the answers on exactly how it ends. But right now, you have almost no responsibility. You got no bills. You haven't run up a bunch of big bills. You can sleep on a futon in the shop that you rent where you're doing the work. And you can use a hot plate, and you can use the toilet at the back of the shop, and you can get a Planet Fitness membership. And as long as you're up to something big, chicks are going to dig that because everybody else is doing the conventional herd thing, And then you'll look back in 5 years. You will be successful because you'll get tired of being broke. And you look back in 5 years and you'll be telling guys, you remember when we lived back over there, and you're in a bigger shop now and the futon's gone and all that junk. And, it goes by so quick. And it's easier to do that when you're in your early 20s than it is trying to do it with a family and that kind of thing. So the advice I give them is go for it now. And look, you're not going to starve to death. I mean, and you'll learn a lot, even if it doesn't work out exactly how you thought it was going to work out, but you got to do it now.
Yeah, I agree. And purposes are kind of like those doors. They just kind of open up in front of you. And as you're taking action, I like the idea. I shout out to Aaron Clary. He's got the course out on minimalism. Guys, as a young man, if you can adopt some minimalist habits, they serve you extremely well. Yes, it's nice to sport the nice fancy watch and all that stuff, but you don't need any of that to actually have fulfillment in your life. You could be incredibly fulfilled. And the only reason we do things like this is either an investment or to show other men or to flash in front of a bunch of 304s that find it impressive because they think it might be the next meal ticket. That's not. Learn some minimalism. It would be my recommendation for sure. And when don't get too hung up in this red pill stuff, other than the positivity. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, but there's also there's some anecdotes out there that are considered to be hard and fast that they are not. I'll just leave it at that. Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Laurent, you want to add to this conversation on how how these young men can find their navigation system, since you're an expert sailor sailing yachts around the world? How do they find their starfish navigation system, so to speak?
I was thinking about Me Too, and Me Too is nothing new. There's a precedent, actually. Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a young black man who was stoned to death, and it tells you something like, "Don't trust the white lady." So, but the idea behind this is like it had extended to the general population. From one group, it extended to general population and to all young kids. Not only that, but the young children don't have good role models to go along. So coming from single mothers, as we saw before. So at the end of the day, this is your life. So you got to start with one decision, a very simple decision. Take responsibility for 100% of the things happening in your life. 100%. The good, the bad, and even what, the Viktor Frankl, always come back to him, but Viktor Frankl is in Auschwitz. Yeah, my purpose is to play golf. Yeah, really? So take decision, take responsibility, and then you charge a course from that, and it's not very complicated. Money, muscle, game, frame. So it's not super complicated. As far as girls are concerned, we make it very daunting, but actually girls want to be approached. If you change your mindset about it, cold approach. Like you go to groceries, there's a girl on the way there. There's a girl. Like there's always a girl somewhere. Like even my kids started complaining, like, Papa, we need to get to the supermarket. Stop talking to every single other girl. Like, wait a minute. So you talk to girls, and if you treat it like a video game, because if you focus on the process, not the outcome, and don't take anything personal. Take it as a video game. Like Mystery was there for a reason. People forget that Mystery was a magician, but it was also a video gamer. So the reason why it's called a game, like Mystery and Neil Strauss, is because it's a game. Play it like a game. You go to stage 1, go talk to the girl. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, next one. Like when you get shut down, because a zombie bites you in internet, it doesn't affect you. If you don't give the same attachment, if you have the same non-attachment, it's going to be fun. And it's a game. It's supposed to be fun. So focus on the process, focus on all going through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, but protect yourself at all times. Remember, this is MMA.
Sounds so easy. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. I'm gonna come back to Tom. I know Mark is under a time frame. Mark, I want your final thoughts on this this topic as far as men being rudderless in the sexual marketplace. How can they correct this, and what simple advice might you ask? I know that you also do counseling, so you could help them individually. So, Mark, you're muted. You're muted. Yeah, Mark, let me try to unmute you.
Yeah, there was a Harley out there. I had to. I kind of go along with what Glenn said there. That men need to take, or young men need to take more risks. They need to be more. They just need to get out there and do something and get away from those games and get out and talk to real people. They need to find a mentor. If their father isn't mentoring them, they need to find a mentor. And I know they're just going to have to grow a pair. That's a hard. It's really hard to do unless you have. But contrary to the way it was when I was young, you had to go out and find a real mentor.
Yeah.
It's really easy. You get on YouTube, there's all kinds of people on there that will help you. You have opportunities today that did not exist when I was young. Especially one of you guys said something about there's so many women. I think it was Glenn again. There are so many beautiful women in the world. I have an opportunity to be with women that I never could have dreamed of being with when I was younger because of the internet. Because, I mean, I can talk to someone on the other side of the world. I can fly and meet them. So yeah, if you get your money together, money, muscles, game, frame, it's like, and I think Rafe was talking about, one of you guys was talking about them, going to work. I know it was, maybe it's TJ, but they got to get themselves together first before they go, get some inner strength, get some character. And to get that, they got to go through the fire. I think of the old expression, for in fire gold is tested, and worthy men in the crucible of humiliation. They got to go out there and get some humiliation, some humbling. But if they're too afraid to do that, they're never going to grow in strength of character. And as you guys know, your looks may get your foot in the door, but you open your mouth and you have nothing on the inside, that girl's not going to be interested in you for anything more than maybe a free ride, a drink, or a meal ticket. And that is it. So they just need to find someone to guide them. If you're going to climb Mount Everest, you don't go do it by yourself. And for some guys, this is like Mount Everest, going out there and approaching girls. So find a guide, find a mentor. So what if you get rejected? But find somebody that you know is good with women, that he can do the deal, that he knows the game, and then stick to that guy. That's what I did when I was young. I found a guy that was good with women, and the rest is history. So I got to go. It was a pleasure meeting you guys. I got to get out of here.
Find him on Mark's Inspiration YouTube channel and Instagram. He's an excellent source, gentleman. I, like him, I did find real mentors in my life early on, which was pretty amazing. And they were mentors that were great with women. And some of those didn't, I didn't have to face some of those challenges. Although just like everybody else, of course, approach until you do it, it seems like an incredibly hard task,
Right.
Although when I do consult with some of the young men, I ask them, do you have a problem talking to a group of men? No. Well, then you technically would have no problem talking to a group of women. It all exists here,
Exactly. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
TJ, what are your thoughts on this? Young men that are rudderless. I think even some guys that get dropped back into the sexual marketplace after having an absence, say they were in a long-term relationship for a long time and either had the death of a wife or, unfortunately had a divorce, that they seem somewhat rudderless too, especially if they didn't have any experience with this online stuff. I mean, what do you think about that, TJ? What's your thoughts on this? And what advice would you give to help a guy feel positive or learn how to take this information and do something with it?
So staying on the theme of purpose, drive, effort, excellence. Okay. So a quote, first time I heard it was Napoleon Hill, and it's the path of least resistance that makes all rivers and most men crooked. So we were talking about not taking risk and trying to be safe, as Glenn was saying. So knowing and understanding that that's a phenomena in the universe. Hey, look, if you take the path of least resistance, you're going to get very poor results almost always. Second quote, Gunny Torres. He said, hey, good leaders let their people fail. They don't leave them in failure, but they let them fail. Now, that doesn't mean with ordnance and surgery. I mean, if they're going to be a catastrophic failure, but if they're going to mess up, you stand in the wings and you watch them fuck it up. And then after they've fucked around, then you go in there and you mentor them and you say, hey, how'd you fuck this up? How can you do it better?
Give them enough rope, huh, Doc?
Yes. Yeah. And I will tell you, it gets me so much shit in this current military environment because they do not want to do that. Everybody wants to be coddled. So it's very frustrating. Very frustrating. The last point, everybody. Yes, right. So the last point would be, we were talking about purpose a lot, and how I see it, it's layered. So you have your purpose. It's kind of the highest thing. Well, what allows you to pursue that purpose? Well, that's going to be a job that provides compensation. Well, how do you get a good job? You have to have satisfaction in that job, then compensates you, that allows you to stay on purpose. Because if you hate your job, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to stay focused on purpose, because it's going to suck the emotional and psychological, spiritual energy out of you. All right. So to that point, This has been studied for at least the last 30 years in industrial and organizational psychology. And this same metric comes up again and again and again. And it's the number one metric for job satisfaction. And that is autonomy. And if you have autonomy, then you can get job satisfaction, you can get good compensation package, and now you can have your purpose.
Oh, man. Autonomy. That is very true. And that's really, that speaks to my spirit, because that's what freedom does. It speaks to your spirit, the human spirit. If you have that kind of autonomy, that's true freedom for sure. Thank you, Tom. It was beautiful. I want to hear from Wraith, and then we're going to take our guest tonight and HUDs, and we're going to let you guys kind of run with what you did to solve your issues as a young man. We'll hear your stories and all that stuff. I think it'll be fantastic. So, Wraith, do you have anything to add? You're muted, son. Yep, Wraith.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody said. And in a sense, like I said, when we really start looking at how do we help ourselves, you know, it's, as you know, you coach people, it's a tailored approach to those individuals, because you're dealing with, you know, their fears and what their fears cause for them. There are systems that, you know, we can use to have them explore that and help them move forward. But ultimately, it's finding within yourself the desire to be a better person, to contribute first to yourself, then to your family, and then to humanity. And TJ's right, you know, purpose is that, but how do you do that? People find different ways, and sometimes it's not about money. There are people that strive very well, you know, without making a lot of money, and stay on, you know, and are able to self-actualize their purpose. But, you know, is it harder for them? Yes. You know, and the reality is money does make things easier, but the other side of that is it's not everything. And, you know, I do career counseling too. And I tell a lot of guys, you know, are you happy with what you're doing? And are there better ways that you can save, spend your money so that you can, you know, meet your needs? But like I said, it's first off getting people to quit living in either, I coach young men, teen men. It's getting them out of living in, you know, the zone where they're surviving. Yeah. You know, you've got to move past survival. Okay. And until you can move past survival, you're never going to be able to self-actualize into being the person you want to be. But part of that is knowing where you want to be and knowing what your contributions are that you want to make to the world, I guess is the best way to put it. How do you build that legacy?
Yeah.
For me, my legacy was always my family. You know, they're all grown now. They're all successful. Most of them make more money than I do. So, you know, did I fulfill that obligation to them? Yes, I did. But now there's new obligations for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's, you know, to feed that purpose, to be the best me I can be every day and to contribute. I find things that do that for me. But like I say, any young man that wants to change his life first has to evaluate himself and figure out what he wants in life and how he wants to be treated and how he wants to treat other people. You've got to do that, guys. That's it, Thor.
No, I completely agree with that. And I'll just see what your thoughts are on this, because I've done this consulting as well as you, and some guys really struggle when you ask them where they want to be, and they get stuck in the details. So if you're out there listening to this, at least for me, I'll get the guys to talk about where they want to be in general. And as we progress, either through journaling or something like that, those details will come to you to fill in. So we'll start with a general framework and move down from there. So don't get hung up on the details, having to have them dress before you start, because if you do that, you'll never start, you know. And I do find that with some of the clients, they do that. Ray, do you find that too? Sometimes they really have just that start, is they get hung up on the details.
It's the first session is always trying to talk them into making change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that comes from the fact that, you know, like I said, they do live in that fear.
Yeah.
And that fear, mostly, I don't get to deal with a lot of young men that have violent tendencies, or they're trying to act out that frustration with violence.
Same.
Anger. Most of the anger is self-imposed or self toward them. They're angry with themselves. And, getting them to stop being angry with themselves is the first step to get them to quit being apathetic about life, and to quit living in fear. Because that fear causes shame. And that's the first step. And I think I'll let the young guys speak for themselves, but I think that's where you started.
No, thanks for
your apathy or fear.
Yeah, we'll let them speak on that too. I think that's really awesome, and it's very truthful. So let's get started with the young guys, and then I'll wrap it up for today. But let me just add a couple comments onto that. I think it's really important that men are not sexless. You could go for periods of time, but it is not healthy for you to do this. There are many actual physical benefits for men to not be sexless. We are designed with two drives primarily: survive and procreate. They both must be met. It's important that you do that. And so get you with a tribe, and with that tribe, have that tribe support the fact that you have those drives and that those drives are important. You move past the survival, you get that all taken care of. And then you deal with your sexual strategy so that you can procreate or have the options to do so. And don't be one of those guys that's sexless. That does not serve you. And believe it or not, it does not serve the women in society for you to be sexless. And that's straight up truth. So, to sum it up, all men need to develop a starfish navigation system to have a rudder in life. So, Randall, let's talk, man. Tell us how you've dealt with all of this and where you're going.
So I think one of the things that really helped with me was I stopped being a victim. I left that mentality behind. I was like, just being able to take responsibility and owning the shit that's in my life. That's me. That's my fault. I chose that. So by saying okay, this is the situation I'm in it because I chose to be in it, which means that my choices can lead me out of it. So I'm not weak here. I'm not powerless here. I am in control of where I'm at. I've backslid on my fitness, and that's something I'm working on still. But I used to weigh over 300 pounds, and I've gotten down to under 200 because I chose things differently than what I was doing. And so I was able to then change where my life was going by having that responsibility and taking it. I was able to change where my life was headed, because who knows if I had stayed that drunkard video game player where I would be. So just by being able to accept the responsibility of what has gone down in my life has given me the power to then change where I'm heading. Like we say, men are rudderless. Well, I've basically taken control of the wheel on my ship. I've not just stopped letting it take me whichever way the wind blows. I'm controlling where it goes. I've set the path. I choose where I'm heading. So it's like taking responsibility for it. It's like saying, I did this to me, is one of the most powerful sayings. No matter what it is, you did it to you, which means you can change it. It's like, oh, you're being lazy or you're not well employed. Well, that's because you've not done what's necessary. You've not taken the responsibility. And another saying that I really enjoy is embrace the suck. So many of us try to avoid pain and avoid hard times because we've been coddled all our life, that we're not used to it. We don't know how to handle it, so we avoid it. We shrink away from it. Embrace it. Hug that cactus, because through that pain, through those trials, you'll become a better man throughout it. And so, I've taken the responsibility that my job I'm not where I want in my life because of things that I've done. I didn't graduate college. I've not taken the steps. I fell into my career, and I make decent money, but it's also at the expense of a lot of hours. So I've taken the responsibility that my choices put me here. Now I've made choices to learn computer coding to then take me to where I can make a decent living without working 100 hours a week. I've embraced, and it's like going through learning this stuff. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm an idiot because I don't understand it. But I embrace that because it's part of the struggle. Is we're not going to be masters of things we've never done before. So expect to fail. Expect to have a little bit of pain. Pick yourself up and keep going. And just find a group of men. Like I found through the Dragon Ship and through the men community, and even the guys at the CME. Oh, being at the CME, like basically it was throwing like just gasoline on my fire. It's inspired me so much that I want to do so much more just so that I can then pass that along to other people. So I can then inspire others. And so just take responsibility and deal with it.
Oh, what a great message. Turning adversity into advantage. Thanks, Randall. Appreciate your message, man. Pleasure having you on board. Hopefully we'll see more of you in the future. Let's talk with Elliot, my British Viking son. How have you started out rudderless at all the disadvantages, and how have you turned it around so that others can learn from it?
Yeah, so I think I started Rudderless, in my opinion, because I didn't have any guidance and I wasn't seeking any guidance. I was very introverted, very similar to Randall, I think. I just did my day job, came home, and then spent all day playing computer games and ignoring the rest of reality. And it got to a stage where that just couldn't happen anymore. And it was just like for me, it was just like a switch that flipped in my head. And then overnight, I changed all of my habits without even consciously thinking. I just said, no more computer games. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to start eating good food, and then just start instilling good habits. I've broken it down a lot.
Was there an actual moment that you can recall that turned it for you?
Yes, there was a moment.
Could you share that with us, or would you be willing to, or maybe another time?
Yeah, basically, I was quite blue pilled, and I got my heart broken by a girl, and then upon reflection, just not even really thinking so much, but just feeling the reflective feeling, rather than sitting there with a pen and paper, which is what I do now. I was just like, whatever I'm doing is not right, so I'm just going to do the opposite. And I just sort of did whatever I thought might have been the best. And it was simple things like go for a run every single day, go to the gym 5 days a week, eat good food, speak to more people, say yes to things, say yes to everything. And just try and be the best version of yourself, whatever that means. Whether that's your looks, whether that's your money. Again, like what John always says, MLD, money, muscles, game, and frame. Just try and expand everything, the people you communicate with, the network that you are part of, and the people you surround yourself with. For me, it kind of expanded into, I learned that the network was a really very, very important thing. Because if you surround yourself with other people who are doing interesting things and who have interesting discussions and who are objective about what they're doing, then that reflects on you, whether you like it or not. So if you surround yourself with the right mentors and the right like-minded individuals that you can have those conversations with, you are going to learn something and you are going to do something, and you can challenge these people as well. And it's very easy because they're like, it's all online communities now, because just like the sexual marketplace is globalized, so is everything else. And this is no different.
No, right.
The only one other thing that I do want to say is
slay dragons, right? You want to slay some dragons? Is that what you're saying?
No more dragons, Thor. No more dragons. something that I remind myself of every day. This is probably the last couple of months I've been thinking about this. I remind myself that I'm gonna say it to all of you. Above everything else, remember that you are the cumulative effort of thousands of generations of men and women before you who struggled and died to pass on their bloodline. You're the end result of that. So make sure that, one, you make them proud, and make sure that you make your future children proud to be your children as well. I remind myself of that every single day now.
My long lost of British Viking son becoming a god amongst men. Very good. I'm glad to see you on that path, that you made that decision. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us men have to be smacked with that brick of reality when what we believed in as far as human sexual dynamics and the opposite sex, the nature of females, smacks us in the face. And we go, I thought I did everything right. And we did. And it did not work. That's when we have to take accountability for what we have done was probably the exact opposite of the way we should have lived. And that's where I love what the red pill can offer. Yeah, set aside some of the things that are really harsh, but you know, still it may not be flattering, but the red pill certainly gives you a lot of options, and this community that's built up around it's been pretty amazing. HUDs, you have an experience and you have a lot of wisdom for a young man. I've been working with you for quite some time. Appreciate you being one of our panel members. You give a great perspective. What's your perspective on men being rudderless, and how do they correct it? How did you correct it? Did you have an epiphany of sorts? I mean, obviously you got the look side down. So where did you come into game and all that stuff? Because you're starting, you know, you're getting that, and you're starting to get your money right. You got your frame down. What did it take? And did you make any mistakes along the way?
Oh, there were plenty of mistakes along the way. I think the number one thing that I want to hone in here is going out solo. I know that's like an old POA thing that they talked about, like go out to the bar by yourself. But when you're able to do that, go out to a bar, nobody's with you, and just meet people, it really tests your social acumen. So if you're going in there and let's say you blow out a set, then you don't have a group to walk back to. You have no one. You're completely by yourself. And so by doing something like that, and I did it personally, there was a local bar that we have around here that I did this for about a year. So every Friday and Saturday I would go out and completely alone. Some nights maybe I'd have my friends, but most nights not. At least one night a week not. And doing something like that, it really trains you on how people think and how to, I guess, get people to like you. Because when you think about like celebrities and things like that, why do people want to hang out with them? Well, because they have status. And why do they have status? They have status because people like them. Okay. So if you're able to go to a place and you turn that entire venue into a place where everybody knows you, like let's say you run into a group at the beginning of the night, and it can be just a short conversation, but then afterwards you run into them an hour later and they're like, oh, HUDs, like what's up? Like, how you been? Because you just talked to them earlier and you brought their energy up. It's absolutely fantastic, and it teaches you game in a way that's very different than what's talked about a lot. And I think that that's the most important part of it's the most important part of dating. When you think of how, I guess how Rollo has said before, be a man that men want to be and women want to be with. That's exactly what that is. If you're able to walk into a room of strangers and get everybody to like you, then you've mastered game. And if you can do that over and over and over again, you've mastered game, and you will never be rudderless again.
Oh, excellent. I always bring you on for a reason. You do great, man. And appreciate that. That's fantastic. Guys, we're going to do a round table real quick here, and we'll let everybody say where they're at, how we can contact you. You got any YouTubes going on? We're just going to go ahead and go round table. We'll start with Glenn. We'll finish with me, and we'll be out for today. Unless anybody has final comments, we'll open the floor for a final comment. Anybody have one? Raise your hand. Okay. TJ,
just another quote. It's an Irish quote. Anger, courage, either one just as good in a fight.
Very good. Okay, let's get it started. Glenn, where can we find you? What are you working on? What projects are you in? Where can we find your movies?
Yes, I have several movies in post-production right now. Token Choke Dispensary, where I play crooked DA agent. That one's still in post-production. I'm in the movie Deltopia. That is Jamie Lee Curtis film. That's still in post-production. You can see me in Tenet real quick. I'm just a background guy in that one. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more projects in the work. I'm working on Mind Dates, my movie that I wrote. We're on Slated right now, raising funds. We have a budget. We're working to get that budget up there. So you can always contribute and be part of the producers on that list. You can find me on Instagram under Glenn_Lawrence_presents. You can find me here on YouTube, right here with THOR with the rest of these great elders on the council. Or you can hear me talk shit on my own channel. I mean, I say the same shit all the time, you know. But one thing I want to say to these other gentlemen that are new here, thank you for coming on. Your stories are resonating with more men than you think. I think a lot of the guys on this panel could all say that we are related at some point in our life to the exact situations that you're going through. Couple things I want to say, Randall. I'm going to start tagging you on your Instagram, and I'm going to challenge you like I challenge everybody else to a bench press competition. So that's your motivation. Any of you other young bucks want to challenge me, you're more than welcome. Wraith, I already know that you beat me. Thor lost last week. Chad, I'm coming down to you. I'm coming down to Texas in 2 weeks, so I'll see you. I'm going to get you, man. TJ, I'm not going to mess with you. You're a Marine. I'm going to leave you alone. But that's it for me, guys. Thank you.
All right, Glenn. We'll let you have it. Texas Chad, I mean, I know you're not selling anything, but you should because you're such a Chad, man. The success you had is worth something, the value. Where can we find you? What's going on? Can we see you on Instagram? What's up?
Yeah, man. You can follow me on Instagram, the Jimmy Miller on Instagram, as well as Twitter. That's mainly where I'm at. If you want to find me there.
All right, man. And wish the missus good luck, man, on her recovery. Anyway, Lauren, where can we find you? What are you doing? I know you're an author of a book. Go ahead and plug it.
Oh, by the way, yeah, I have a story about the book. So last Saturday, I was the book actually got me the number of Miss Universe Japan, New Zealand.
Wait.
So
the book got you the number of Miss Universe Japan, New Zealand.
She's half Kiwi, half Japanese, and I was showing like, oh, I'm doing kite surfing, and I show this. Oh, this is my book, and then there was a picture of you holding the book, like you an author, and then she immediately punched coordinates into my. And then we're gonna go kite surfing, and I'll take her on the yacht of a friend. So yes, I published the book.
You saw the photo of me holding your book.
And so then she said, like,
the number? What can
exactly, where can I find this man?
Hell.
Thank you, Thor. I wanted to thank you for that.
That's a freaking awesome story, buddy. I love that. All right. So your book is
Algorithmic Short Selling with Python. So if you're in the markets, whether you're long, whether you're short, whatever you're trading, it's not whether you should buy this book, is can you afford not to? Especially in those markets where the market is setting a bit of an amber turd, so it's a bit of an amber's day. Algorithmic Short Selling with Python. All right. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk, buddy, about more pictures, maybe. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
TJ Hunter, man, where can we find you? Plug anything you want, man. We're just so pleased that you can add your wisdom to the panel, Doc.
Well, I do not have any online presence, so. I would make a comment about the young men again, because I imagine they're in their 20s to early 30s. You are so far ahead of the power curve. And as Thor was saying, your story resonates with so many other young men that you probably don't realize, or maybe you do. But I just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing.
Nice. Thanks, TJ. Wraith, I got your Facebook in the notes here. People want to find you. Go ahead, unmute yourself and let us know where we can find you. What you working on right now, man?
Just working with a young man. I'm working with about 7 or 8 clients. Thinking about starting a group once a month or maybe twice a month. Just so guys can join and have some conversations. You can find me at Wraith_Tour on Facebook. Same thing on Telegram. Same thing on Twitter. Same thing on Instagram. If you want to work with me, hit me up. If you just want to have a conversation over the text market there, hit me up. Always there. Randall, and Elliot, I've seen a lot of stuff that you guys are posting in the groups. You guys are helping other young men on that journey. Keep it up. And, you know, there's a lot of wisdom in your life that you've lived through, and it always helps to share that. So that's it.
Thank you, Wraith. I really appreciate that. And to the guys in the groups, Randall, Hudge, Elliot, and the rest, you know, I would love to see, Wraith, I'd love to see you do a group too. I mean, such as the Dragon Ship Mastermind, we meet once a month, but, you know, just to say these guys are helping guys in these groups. And not only that, you're emerging as leaders. And, you know, we've only had, I think, since we started, only one person remove themselves. And so there's a lot of value to be had in these groups when they're curated the way that we've been doing it, because there's a need for it as far as men's groups are concerned, to talk about things like we talked about today, but in far more depth and in far more detail for each individual. That's where the rubber really hits the road, and where friendships are really formed, and we leverage each other in these networks. So we're much more, we stand much taller together than we do apart. So anyway, Randall, where can we find you? What's going on?
So you can find me on Instagram at Talon the Titan. It's obviously no spaces with Instagram. And then if you so choose, I also have a TikTok where I post my workout videos whenever I do them on there. Also, same name, Talon the Titan. So if you guys want to follow me, go ahead. I'm pretty open about like my fitness, so there's times where I'll post in weigh-in videos and I'm just in basketball shorts, forewarning you guys. So just giving it's up to you guys if you guys choose to follow me. If you do, cool, I'll follow you back.
Huds, tell us what you're up to, man. What projects you got in there? How's your YouTube doing? What's going on, man?
Yes, sir. So mainly main point of communication and where I post a lot is on Instagram, and it's at the Hudsman. So the Hudsman. YouTube has been a bit on the back burner right now. I'm actually in the middle of a move. But within that move and everything else, I am about 2/3 done my next book, and this is going to be hardcover. And it's there's a lot of jam-packed information in there. So looking forward to getting that done and sharing it with you all.
Yeah, me too. That sounds fantastic. Elliot, where can we find you? What are you up to, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a social media presence. I don't have YouTube videos that I put out. All of my work is done through networking with guys like you.
Yeah, fantastic. We love having you there too. You're definitely one of the captains in the Dragon Ship, so we appreciate your input there each and every time. Speaking of which, I'll go ahead and close this out, and I'll talk about the Dragon Ship. It's a mastermind once a month, a 3 to 4 hour meeting with me and most of the members. In fact, all the members of this panel are invitees and or members, and we get together and we generally talk about topics that through a red pill lens, and we encourage our members to actually bring topics to the table and give a presentation. This is not with a critical eye. This is with the eye towards developing social skills with other men. And when you teach, you learn so much more. And this is a way to elevate it and grow the Dragon Ship concept so that it moves beyond just a small meeting. We have 30 members at this point, and we're looking to grow it. So if you want to join that, the links down below in the description, as well as find me on becomedurable.com. And of course, here on the YouTube channel, it's RP Thor. On Instagram, it is rp.thor. And you can see more and more of us there. I appreciate everybody that's come tonight. And without further ado, if you do join the Dragon Ship, there's a special. If you join 3 months at a time, you get a discount. And about 10 days, we're going to have a meeting. Love to see some folks there. Hopefully these guys will all be able to join in. I know they can attest that it's interesting and it's fun, and it's a way to take action immediately in your life. That's for sure, and get some social support. So with that, guys, I'm going to close out the Elders Council for this week. Thank you for participation, guys, and skull.